on writing a function. Now when you get a problem in class, before you start, what you want to do is actually read the problem. Read the problem. Because sometimes you might want to read it once or twice just to make sure you know what your goal is. And that's when we come to the second step, which is understanding the problem, or understanding what's being asked. And once you understand what's being asked, then you can list your variables, which will be your constants, your outputs, and your inputs. Okay. Third, you want to calculate on paper so you can test your solution, so you can test to see if MATLAB is actually correct to test. Then you want to translate it to code. And that's when you use MATLAB. So we're going to do an example. I'm going to write the problem over here. Okay. Write a function that finds the area of a circle if you are given the radius. So basically, I've read the problem to you, so we've completed step 1. Next, we're going to understand. In order to understand the problem, you have to know what the area of a circle is. Does anybody know the equation for the area of a circle?
I think it's pi r squared.
Pi r squared. So area of circle equals pi r squared. Good job. Okay. Next, we want to list our variables. Our constants will be, anybody know what our constants would be in this case?
Pi, right?
Pi. We'll do input first. Our input variable would be
the radius.
And our output, which MATLAB is going to give us, is going to be the area. Good job. Okay. So, once we have that, we're going to start on our function. So, I'll just erase this. We know what our constants are. We just wrote it out. Okay. So, who knows how we start a function? Saray, do you know how we start a function? What's the first thing we do?
Write the word
function. Good job. So we're going to write function to allow MATLAB to know that we're giving it a function. Now, what should we name our output variable? Because isn't that what comes next?
I think we should name it area.
Area. Okay, let's name our output variable area. And after that, we set it equal to, does anybody know what it's called? What we set it equal to?
Whatever the function.
The name of the function.
Is.
Okay, so what do we want to name the function? Since we're finding the area of a circle, maybe we should name the function
area underscore circle.
Let's just do circle.
That's better.
And after that, you put your input variable, which will be your radius. Now you can name it radius, you can name it rad, you can name it r, you can name it chair, you can name it whatever. But we're gonna, for simplicity, we're gonna name it r. Okay. So now we have the function header. This is what this is called, function header. Now we have to actually code for what we want it to do. So basically, so far this is saying we're going to take an R and do something with it. So you have to define what an R is. So what you're going to do is you're going to say area, because this is going to be our output, equals the equation for the circle, which is pi r squared, pi times r squared. Now, this is your multiply symbol, which is basically an asterisk on the keyboard. So that's what you use for multiply in MATLAB. So basically you're saying the area is equal to pi times whatever you put in here squared. And after you have that, you're going to end your function. And you have to put in because you have to tell MATLAB that the function's over. And so, we read the problem, we understood the variables, we're going to calculate it on paper. So let's just say our radius is 2. Then our area should equal pi times 2 squared, which is 4 pi. So you would just type it in MATLAB and run it and see if it actually comes out correctly. But when you type it in MATLAB, you go to the command window, to your prompt, and you say circle, parentheses 2. And you hit enter, and it should return to you 4 pi. But it says pi like that, usually. So that's how you do it. And that's how you would test your code. But before you run your code, there's one special thing that you must do. Okay. We have our editor window, and we have function, have our output variable equals the function name, this like this. But you have to save it before you can actually run the code. So when you save it, you have to save it as this right here, which is your function name. So that when you type it in your prompt window, it can call the function from the space over here, the directory. So make sure anytime you write a function, you save it as the function name. Okay. Then we're going to do one more example. Okay. We're going to write a function that finds the average of 4 test grades that count for 30% of your total grade. And returns the number of points received for that test average. So, I've read the problem to you. Do you all understand what the problem is asking for? Yes, no, maybe so.
Average makes sense, but the rest.
Okay. See, this is why it's important to read your problem and understand what it's asking for, because you can't write a function for something you don't know what the function is asking for. So basically, you're going to have 4 test grades. Test 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you're going to find the average of those, which is you would add these up correct and divide by the number you have, which would be 4. So you have the average. And then usually they say your test might count for 25%, 40%. But in this case, your tests count for 30% of the grade. So when you're trying to find your grade, you usually multiply by 30%, which in this case would be 0.3. And you get a number. And you have to add those to your other grades that you have. So basically, we're asking for that number of points out of 100 that you get for your average test. Does that make sense? No.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Okay. So now we know the problem. And since we have limited board space, I'm going to erase it. I'm going to list our outputs. Our outputs are going to be average and final number of points. Our inputs. Who knows what the inputs are going to be?
The 4 test grades.
The 4 test grades. Correct. Okay. So we're going to start by writing a function. And actually writing the word function. And we're going to make our output variable points, because that's going to be our final output variable. And we're going to equal the name of the function. We're going to name it grades, since we're using grades. And since we have 4 test grades, I'm going to name my variables x, y, z, and t. Okay, so when you find the average, how do you find the average of something?
You take the sum and divide it by the number.
The sum. So I'm going to say average equals the sum of these, which would be x plus y plus z plus t. And you divide by the number, which is 4. You have 4 test grades. So that's average. And I'm sure, does anybody wonder why I just wrote average, since average isn't anywhere over in here? Is anybody confused by why I used average right here, the word average?
A little bit.
Okay, so basically I'm just going to define average as this number right here. But when I define it, I can define it that way because I have known values right here. So basically I'm just going to, please turn off that cell phone. So basically I'm going to say, when I put these values in, I'm going to stick them in here and divide by 4 and get the average. And once I have the average, I want to find the points, the total points. So points is going to be my output variable, and that's the last thing I'm looking for. So I'm going to say points equals the average, which we have defined up here, times 0.3, which is 30%. So you know that that's how much it counts for. And then I'm going to end my function.